I was given these three messages in my head during my near-death experience of who am I, where am I, and why am I? Those three questions have not left my noggin in 6 years now, and they drive basically everything I do. I had sanitized my consciousness out of my body. I had made my body such an inhospitable place that my consciousness couldn't really be in it anymore. It was too much pain and trauma. And I was out of my body. I was watching me down on the bed, and it was kind of grainy, kind of black and white. People think your brain creates consciousness. Your brain doesn't create consciousness. Your brain actually filters 99.9% of reality out. This earth is, I call it a simulator for consciousness development, that the consciousness comes in here as like a training ground. The Monroe Institute is one of those observation points for interdimensionals and non-human intelligences. I always describe us as we're a fusion of two beings. We're a higher self and a human self. Now, this is not to say there's not aliens. Of course there are. But I think most of what we're seeing here is Earth-made, earthbound, but maybe not from this time period. I mean, there's trillions and trillions of stars and probably life forms in the cosmos, but there seems to be a lot of attention on Earth and humans right now. And I think that we're an important part of the puzzle.
Yeah, so welcome, Jordan. I can already tell that we're going to vibe really, really well today, and this is going to be a great conversation. So super appreciative of you joining the show today and driving down. I know it wasn't a terribly long trip for you, but whatever it was, I appreciate you making the time to come down and be on the show. So thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me. I mean, this is a top-notch show and everything, and you guys have been so gracious, and I've been watching you guys for a couple of years now, and to be here is really cool. So thanks for having me.
Awesome. So yeah, tell the audience about yourself. What are you into? Just tell us everything if you could. Great introduction.
Everything. Here we go.
Yeah. Not everything.
Get comfortable. No, so I mean, it's kind of a traditional story in the sense that I was a normal guy, corporate life, kids and the wife and the white picket fence and suburbia and all that kind of stuff. And then things happened in my life. I lost my mom and my whole life shifted, and we threw caution to the wind. We moved to Florida, had nothing, just rearranged our lives spontaneously. And that started this whole new chapter in my life. And then right after that, I got super duper sick, self-inflicted. I was an alcoholic for years and struggling with my mom's death. And
me too. By the
okay.
way. Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know that. And I mean, we're definitely not alone. This is very common. And I think that's why a lot of people resonate with my story, because it is so, it's a normal story in a lot of ways. The fast forward version of it is I had a near-death experience, and then that launched me into this whole trying to understand consciousness, reality. At that point, knowing that I'm more than my physical body, knowing that, there is something else out there, it really made me just stop everything I was doing. I completely stopped all my daily activities. We did a 180, me and my wife, and we just immersed ourselves in this world. And we can come back and touch on some of these points. I'm just blowing through, but it set me on this trajectory to really try to figure out the deeper meaning of life. And I was given these three messages in my head during my near-death experience of who am I, where am I, and why am I? And those three questions have not left my noggin in 6 years now. And they drive basically everything I do, is trying to figure out, who we are, really who we are, more than our physical bodies, where we are, what this place is, not just the physical earth, but what is this dimension of reality and why are we here? And that's what drives everything I do. I created a podcast out of it called Conscious Observers, where I basically just spend all my time exploring consciousness and the deeper meaning of life.
Love it, man. That is super inspirational, motivational. It's actually a lot of what we talk about on this show too. And as you know, from watching the show, and it's also, kind of personally for me, very, very important as well to answer those questions. I haven't had a near-death experience like you, but I still have that itch and that urge to understand, what is consciousness? What is life itself? What is this place that we're in? Because it's you can, as a human race, we go about making decisions, and we all of those decisions are based off of what we think reality is, and it's if our understanding of the reality that we exist within is even slightly off from what we think that it is, and the decisions that we make and the things that we do and the collective what we accomplish how we choose to spend our time and our days, it could completely change. It could completely be different than what we're doing today from a societal civilization standpoint. And if we actually knew the nature of reality. So I think I'm with you. It's like, is this simulation? Is it, is there a religious component of this? Is there an non-human intelligence component of this? Is there a spiritual component of this? The consciousness thing. It all seems to be there, and it's like, okay,
it's all of it.
Yeah.
It is, and that's what my studies have. I went to the Monroe Institute. I trained there. I've worked with some of the best consciousness explorers and researchers in the world, and I've taken all these different disciplines and tried to make sense of it all, because so many people are certain that, okay, this is the way it is, this is the way it is. No, it's a material world. When we die, it's just blackness. No, it's a simulation. And none of this is real. It's all virtual. Or all these different philosophies and mindsets. And the more I researched it all, they're all true in their narrow point of view. None of them are wrong or false, because this reality is so layered. It's so multidimensional. And that's when I created my simulator theory out of all the 6 years of research, hardcore research. I mean, experiential research, going to the Monroe Institute and literally learning how to traverse different dimensions. I've had face-to-face, interactions with non-human intelligences multiple times. We've had multiple physical experiences with beings, different types of life forms. All these things have really made me realize that, and even studying the neuroscience of it and all the cutting-edge consciousness research, that it's all those things. There is this physical world. There's this physical reality. You're sitting there in a chair. You exist, right? Yeah,
I exist. Yeah,
you exist.
As life. Yep.
And that's so important.
We can say that conclusively.
It's so important to understand that, because your head can spin by diving into all these theories. But you exist. This world exists. There is an objective reality out there, but it is informational based, and it conveys that information to us. We bring it in through our 5 main physical senses, and then we render this reality inside of our head. It goes in through our reticular activating system, and the thalamus kind of projects this sort of mental movie into our cortex. And so inside of our mind's eye, we're playing this simulation, but that simulation is based on real, actual, objective data in the real world, but it's flavored by our beliefs and our patterns and our addictions and our behaviors and our thoughts and our feelings. So it is a simulation.
And identification.
Yeah, it's a simulation inside of your head based on a real objective world. And I think when you fuse those two things together, it explains so many things. It explains all the discrepancies. How can it be a simulation and virtual and also be very real and solid? And it's because it's a little bit of everything.
Love it. Let's dive deeper into that in a moment. I'd like to, because this is our first podcast together, I'd like to understand a little bit about the experiences that you have had as an individual. And I know that this is out there, and I know that you've talked about this, but for my audience, and many of them will be familiar with you, and some might not be. I'd like you to, if you could, just please explain the near-death experience that you had. Maybe we start there, and then we'll get into some of the other entities and whatnot that you've seen or interacted with. I'm interested in diving down that rabbit hole, and then of course your general overall philosophy on things. But if you could, maybe we'll kick off with the near-death experience.
Yeah, and it's a great place to start, because it's what started my whole journey here. But also, the more I started being transparent about it and talking about it, people from all walks of life and ages and backgrounds and cultures came to me with telling me almost identical stories. This is not unique at all, but I had very bad general anxiety disorder, chronic panic attacks, debilitating, and there were so many things I couldn't do in life, like sleep. I had chronic insomnia. I got to the point where I couldn't even drive a car or ride an airplane because my anxiety was so bad. And I tried all the things, nothing was working, and I felt like I was just about to explode at all given times. And that was the biggest problem in my life. And I just heavily medicated with alcohol, because that was just the thing that worked. And I was in the corporate world at the time, and it got me through my day. And it worked. It was a Band-Aid, and it was culturally acceptable. Everybody was doing it. And then it got worse and worse and worse and worse, right?
You drinking at work, or you drinking after work, or both? Or
when I was in the corporate world, I had a little bit more managed. Whenever I moved to Florida, and you get out here, and it doesn't matter what day of the week it is, it doesn't matter what time of the day it is, a totally different culture and vibe. It just poured fuel on the fire. And then when I lost my mom, I definitely just, that was the beginning of the end. I mean, at that point, I didn't really care about my future or anything else, and I went in this downward spiral. And I have a beautiful family, and looking back, I mean, I don't know what was in my head, but I walked away from my house. I just completely just threw all these things in my life that I cared about down the drain, and I went in this downward spiral, and I hit rock bottom. And I was laying in my bed and for days, and I was very, very sick. I had pancreatitis. My pain was a 10 out of 10 for over a year, and I was just
Wow.
I was drinking. I mean, it was bad. It was very, very, very bad. It wasn't just like I had a little drinking problem. This was severe.
Okay.
And to the point where my entire body shut down. Started having heart failure, liver failure. I couldn't get out of bed for days and days and days. And at that point, I had sanitized. I know this now looking back on it. I had sanitized my consciousness out of my body. I had made my body such an inhospitable place that my consciousness couldn't really be in it anymore. It was too much pain and trauma. And at that point, I was watching all of this from almost like a security camera point of view. It felt like up in the corner of the room, and it was kind of grainy, kind of black and white, kind of like a traditional security camera point of view. And I was out of my body. I was watching me down on the bed. I watched my wife bust in and basically force me into the car and take me to the emergency room. I had BS'd her for a few days, telling her I had the flu and I was just sick. She was working, and I was dying. And my consciousness was no longer in my body. I was watching my body literally die below me and sort of helpless. Anyways, I go to the hospital and, they admit me. They're telling me I'm not going to make it for the most part. They're doing the tough love thing, but they weren't. It's like when you're on an airplane and you hit turbulence. And I always look at the face of the stewardess. I'm like, if she's worried, then I'm worried. But most of the time they're not. They're like, oh, a little turbulence, no big deal. The faces on the nurses and the doctors was one of concern. It wasn't a good situation.
And were you conscious looking at their faces?
At this point, when they admitted me, I kind of came back into my body.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because that would have been a long time out, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
But I even described it. I wrote a book about this, and I described it as when she was driving me to the hospital, my consciousness was outside the car, and it felt like it was flapping like a cape in the wind behind.
Wow.
And that's the feeling that I got.
Wow.
And it was surreal. And it's like, when they're shooting a movie and they have the dolly outside the car, that's what my consciousness was watching me.
Wow.
And so it was out of my body for a while, and it was weird because I don't know if it knew if I was going to make it, And this is actually...
It is you.
It is me.
Yeah.
It is me. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And so then when they got me stabilized, they said they had given me more IV sedatives than they'd ever given anybody there before.
Wow.
So I'm setting records. And so they moved me up and they had me stabilized, and I felt like my consciousness was back in my body. And here's where it gets really, really wild. We were visited by this, I don't know what you want to call it, but a blue orb, a blue light. There was a blue light in the room that wasn't coming from any equipment or anything. And I have a photo of it, and I should have given it to y'all before. It's my least favorite picture in the entire world because I look terrible. I mean, I'm damn near dead. But there's this blue light, and it's right off camera, and we're taking a selfie. It's the first time through this whole ordeal. My amazing wife is by my side the whole time. Sarah, she's amazing. She's the reason I'm alive. And she's sitting there, and we take a selfie. And for some reason, I have a sticker on my forehead because I had a company called Alive and Kicking. And I had the wherewithal somehow right before, as I was being dragged out of the house, to grab my Alive and Kicking shirt and a sticker. I don't know. And that was like my rallying cry after that was I'm alive and kicking. But before that, it was just a tagline for my scooter company, But anyway, so I have this sticker on my forehead. I look ridiculous. My eyes are all dilated. But there's this blue orb that's in the room with us. And from that moment on, I had this incredible feeling of relaxation and sort of purpose. I knew up to that point, I really thought I was going to die. There was no reason for me to survive. And after that point, I was summoning all the nurses, and I'm hooked up to all these machines. They had me, I was a seizure risk because of it turns out I was going through alcohol withdrawals for multiple days leading up to it. I didn't know that. And so I was in really bad shape. So they had me they have the walls up on the thing, and so I can't get out of the bed, and they have me, basically strapped down with all these tubes and stuff, so I can't go anywhere. And I'm summoning everyone in there. I even like requested a meeting with the top doctor of the whole floor. And I said, hey, I got to go home. And they're all laughing at me. They're like, dude, you can't walk. You can't do anything. And I was like, I know, but I have work to do. I got to go home. I got to get out of here. I can't heal here. And I somehow, like they made me stay the night. And the next day they made me sign all these forms. And they said, against our better judgment, but because Sarah's here and she's such a good caretaker and because you're so, persuasive and adamant that you leave, they let me go. And they had to wheelchair me out of there. I couldn't walk or anything. Went home. Long road to recovery ahead of me. When I went to my doctor, she thought I needed to go back to the hospital. She thought I was going to die. She said, I'm afraid you're going to stroke out right here. This is not good. So I'm home, but I have this huge mountain to climb. I mean, my body's dying. Everything's shutting down. But the crazy thing is I had this sense of purpose that I'd never had before. So you would think in that state, I would have been just hopeless. Like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I was driven. I was motivated. I was like, I have to answer these questions and I have to figure this out. And that's what set me on my journey.
Love it. Love it. So a couple of questions. So the blue orb, you saw it with your eyes in addition to the picture? No. Okay.
No, we didn't see it with our eyes at all.
Okay.
Okay.
Love it. Love it.
Oh, such a terrible picture. But you can see that thing.
Not nearly as bad as you made it out to be.
Oh my
actually.
God. I think it's the memory floods back of that moment because
sure.
it was such a traumatizing moment. But
sure.
You can see how amazing Sarah is and the love there.
Yep.
But so that blue thing, I don't know what it is. And it wasn't coming off any equipment or anything. There's no shadows. There's no anything. And we didn't see it. But the weird thing is that's the only picture that we took in the whole ordeal. And it's there in the picture. But from that moment on, that was when everything changed. Like everything changed. Mm-hmm. So
you think it was just in part, right? The experience of being outside of your body and knowing that there is something else, that you are life itself and that your body is just a body. It's a vessel for you to be in. Do you think that separation was a part of what motivated you to completely change, just the knowing? I mean, so a lot of people, spiritually, if you're religious, you think that you die and that your spirit goes on. And so this is not it's not a disruptive or,
it's not that crazy of an idea.
Unheard of conversation, right? I mean, religions believe that we move on after we die. So to have experienced this and to have separated from your actual physical body is something that has been documented by thousands and thousands of people. I mean, millions of people potentially have had this experience. So, I mean, was it that removal and that knowing that, hey, I am life itself. I am a spiritual energy that kind of guided you towards this new version of yourself and this quest to learn more about the nature of reality.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you can hear people say it, but when it happens to you, it becomes a knowing. It's not a belief anymore.
Right.
And when you know something, like you had a personal, subjective, individual experience that no one can take from you. And I understand the state I was in mentally and physically. Anybody can make an argument that I was just out of my mind or hallucinating or whatever. But
you were out of your mind.
Yeah, right. I was. Yeah. Or my mind was out of me.
Right.
But I was
Right.
lucid as can be in my memory. I remember everything very clearly. I don't remember the days leading up to it at all. I don't remember the months leading up to it. But I remember that day like it happened yesterday. This was 6 years ago. And yeah, whenever you have an experience like that, and I've had other ones since then, deliberately through my Monroe training, and you realize this is a repeatable thing and that you can do this, it changes everything. But that first time, it blows those doors open because okay, obviously I didn't mean to do this. This was not part of any sort of a plan. And I would definitely not recommend people go this route. But what it does is it changes your mindset, because now something that you didn't know was possible, you now know is possible. And there's no way to put the toothpaste back in the tube at that point. Now you're more in your physical body because I've been out of my body. And when you're out of your body, I was aware. I was still me. I could still think. And I knew what was going on, which means that me, what is really me, wasn't that thing laying down on the bed. What's really me, the essence of me, was my perception that at that point had been pulled out of my body. So that does change everything. And yeah, it leaves you with millions of questions. And how could you not essentially stop everything you're doing and investigate?
Right, exactly. Yeah, it becomes your life purpose overnight after a life-changing experience like that. Yeah. So Okay, so you one of the things that you said that really sparked my attention was that it's repeatable, that you've had experiences since then. So, is there and Monroe, of course, teaches this and how this can
Yeah.
take place, and so I'm assuming that was huge for you to be able to go there and to learn from them, and then to be able to kind of repeat this process.
Yeah, it was. And there's even a section that I want to hit on before I get to that point, because the way I even got into Monroe Institute was because my blood pressure was sky high, and they were putting me on medications. We got a sauna. I was sauning every day. I was running. I was lifting weights. I was eating, like I went on a straight raw vegan diet. I did every single thing, and my blood pressure wouldn't come down. And they said, okay, we ran out of options. We don't know what else to do, but we are now, the American Heart Association is partnering with Transcendental Meditation. We want you to try meditating. I was like, Doc, you've seen me. I'm way too hyper for this. What are you talking about? I was like, there has to be another way. But nothing was working. We had exhausted everything. So I was like, okay, I'll give it a shot. So I started doing transcendental meditation, TM. Me personally, it didn't resonate with me. I just I didn't get any benefit, and I didn't personally like it. There's nothing wrong with it. It just didn't work for me. And I was like, that was my last chance. Like, at this point, I am starting to get scared. I went into my dark night of the soul period because I started researching consciousness and everything, and I get into the Gnostic, verbiage and demiurge and the fallen, false planet and all this stuff. So I'm going down these dark paths, trying to figure out reality and consciousness. At the same time, my body's dying, nothing's working. Then I'm looking at different things online, and I find I'm literally Googling, what do ADHD people do to meditate? What do hyperactive people do to meditate? And I kept seeing this word hemisync pop up. I was like, okay, I don't know anything about it, but I'll try anything. Turns out hemisync is this technology that Robert Monroe invented way back in the 50s and 60s, because he was a sound engineer. And it's binaural beats. And it's a specific type of binaural beat. It's just sound technology. You put on the headphones. And what it does is, it's amazing. But it creates this, it's called frequency following response, FFR. He ended up patenting. But so they figured out, okay, say a theta brainwave state is 8 hertz, right? Well, you can't hear a 8 hertz audio. It's too low. It's inaudible. But they figured out, if you put, let's say you want to get your brain to an 8 hertz, well, you can do it by getting that hypnagogic twilight, period right before sleep. There's different meditative states that you can do it in, but it takes a lot of practice and discipline. Or you can put 100 hertz in one ear and 108 hertz in the other ear, and then your brain splits the difference and starts vibrating at that 8 hertz. And then you, through frequency following response, your brain gets into that theta brainwave state within minutes. So I was like, okay, this might work. I can hack the system here, right? I don't have to be like a schooled meditator to do this. So I gave it a shot, and it blew my mind. I dove into Ishtok Bentov because he was explaining, for the first time in my life, someone explained to me how meditation actually calms your system and lowers your blood pressure. I was doing these visual meditation practices, listening to binaural beats, the old school hemisync, and my blood pressure came down. I got my emotions under control. I got my life back. I started using these different modalities to literally remote view inside my body and heal my organs, do all this stuff. I mean, I went hardcore on it because I was trying to save my life. And my doctor, who the last time I saw her, told me to lay down and said, I don't know if you're going to walk out of my doctor's office. When I went back, she cried and hugged me and said that they had never seen a turnaround like mine.
Wow.
They had never seen blood test results go from as severe to as good. And she was freaking out. They couldn't explain it.
Which hospital were we?
I was at Sacred Heart in Miramar Beach. Yeah, up in the Panhandle of Florida. So.
What kind of blood pressure readings were you getting?
200 over 100.
Yeah, shit, man. That's
Dude,
tough.
It was so bad.
Yeah, that's
that
tough.
was at the hospital. That wasn't but I mean, my normal one was crazy.
Yeah.
It was bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's close to heart attack for sure.
It was.
Yeah.
I should not have survived it.
Yeah.
My body was not in the condition to have been able to make it through.
I mean, that is heart attack if it's sustained,
It was
eventually.
months of that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's wild, dude.
It was bad.
Congratulations. I mean, really and truly on making it. I mean,
Yeah.
on, being able to turn your perspective around like you have. I mean, it's it's an incredible story. And I know it's not finished yet. It's just getting started. So.
It is. And if it wasn't for all that, it's crazy, but if I could go back in time and change anything, I wouldn't. As wild as that sounds, because it made me who I am now. It made me appreciate just the crap out of life in every moment. It brought me and my wife on like she had a kind of an awakening at the same time as me, and we were able to go on this journey together, which is super fun. It made me look at everything differently, and I would not change it for the world. That's weird.
Yeah.
I've never really thought about that, but that's a weird thing to say.
Right.
But it's like it happened for a reason. And in my whole life, I don't know why, but I romanticized alcohol as a kid. I always wanted to be, I don't even know, it doesn't make any sense to say, but I wanted to be an alcoholic as a kid. Like it was something that I thought, I saw it in a way that I romanticized it. And when it happened to me, obviously it wasn't as cool as I thought it was going to be, but it turned into just a straight up pure physical addiction. And it grabbed me and never let me go. And I felt like at times that my body was literally commandeered by, it's almost like if you say you're driving a car and you hop out and you leave it running with the keys in a bad part of town, you never know who's going to hop in. I felt at times like my body was taken over and commandeered by opportunistic spirits, I guess you'd say. A lot of weird stuff happened, man. And but now I know. I can even rationalize and explain. I can explain what happened. I can explain all these things from this other point of view now. And I never would have had that intellectual ability at that time. I was just going with the flow of life. I had no direction. I had no purpose. I had no control over my own life. And now I do. I have 100% total control over my life. And that would not have happened if I hadn't have gone through this experience.
Right. Right. Yeah. That's massive. Yeah. So, I mean, in terms of the experience then, so that completely changed your life, and now here we are. But what were some of the things within the experience itself? Like from a what were you, were there spiritual entities that you have interacted with? Is there like, what was some of the wildest, because you said, some wild stuff was happening during this point in time. Like, can you talk to us about, some of the experiences that you did have that would be labeled, paranormal or unexplainable or whatever?
Yeah. Like first thing I thought was really cool. So I was learning patterning, and I'll get into like kind of the crazier stuff, but I meant to touch on this earlier. I was learning patterning, which is the Monroe Institute way of manifestation. It's basically realizing that your thoughts, affect reality, sometimes create reality, but at least affect physical matter reality. And you can create patterns. You can place new patterns into the system, and those will actually materialize. So it's called patterning. It's their version of manifestation. And to prove that it works, I'd always dreamed about going to the Monroe Institute. Dreamed. I mean, because I was sitting there, it was during COVID, they were closed down, and I'm learning and doing all this stuff. I literally saved my life using their stuff. And I'm like, oh my God, I want to go there. But at the time I didn't have any money. They were closed, all this kind of stuff. So I was manifesting the crap out of it using their patterning techniques. And I get a email from them one day that says, hey, at this point I had a TikTok. My TikTok went pretty viral and crazy. And my wife's like, you need to do a video a day for 30 days and see what happens. So I was like, that's stupid. I did it anyways, and it went nuts.
Nice,
so always listen to your wife. So anyways, they email me and they're like, hey, we're all sitting here at the Monroe Institute. I'd never had contact with them before. They're like, we're all sitting here watching your videos. And I was like, that's weird. And they're like, we want you to come here. And I was like, okay. And they're like, yeah, we're going to do our first ever creator gateway. And we want you to be one of the people that comes. Hand-selected people all over the world. No one even knew this was happening. They went and found me, brought me up there, rolled out the red carpet. I was like, I didn't think it was real, to the point where when I got off the plane, they said there was going to be a guy holding a sign with my name, to take me there. And I was like, there's no guy. I made all this up. I don't know what's happening. This is not real. And then there's a guy with a sign with my name. And I was like, this is nuts. So that was like one of my first, I'd healed my body using my mind. And now I know I healed my body using my mind. At the time, I was still doubting myself. I was like, maybe bodies heal. They're miraculous healing machines. And I was like, maybe it just healed itself. But after talking to my doctor, they're like, we can't explain anything that happened. So I knew that I was able to use my mind to affect, physical matter, and I was able to heal my body, at least facilitate and accelerate the healing through my mind. But then when I kind of manifested this trip to the Monroe Institute, which was my dream, I was there with Chris Ramsey. I was there with Sean Webb. I was there with, all these people. I know you've had Chris on the show.
Great guy. I love
Ryan
Chris,
Bledsoe was there.
Uh-huh.
We've become like really good friends with all these people. It changed
Great
my
dude
life.
too, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm there at the Monroe Institute with Ryan Bledsoe and Chris Ramsey and just a host of amazing people. And I'm like, whoa, like, did I do this? So that kind of set me down this path where you can take control of your life and you can be a co-creator in your life and you can like literally like, I don't know, in a way determine where you're going and what you're doing. You can drive your own car. And that was all new for me, but I was able to prove it time and time again. So I thought that the whole going to the Monroe Institute and the way it happened was really wild. Now, after that, we've had multiple visits in our house, I guess you'd say. Hat Man is kind of one that people are familiar with, but it's a real freaking thing, like a dark shadow entity in the room with what looks to be like a brimmed hat, which is weird, doesn't make any sense.
How many times have you seen that?
The Hat Man once, shadow beings multiple times.
Okay.
But the hat, actual like silhouette of the hat, just once.
And what was that situation like?
Literally sitting in the corner of a room, dark, like it's like you wake up in the middle of the night. We've had several times where things crawl into bed with us.
Yep.
Which is okay.
Yep.
So
I've experienced that.
okay.
For sure, yeah.
So imagine this: you're laying in bed, and you know how like say my kids are grown now; they're 18 and 26. But when you have a little kid and they crawl into bed with you at night, and you're not eyes closed and stuff, but you feel them get into bed,
Yep.
you feel the bed kind of sink. Okay,
Right.
you know.
Since I was probably 12, I've experienced that because
wow.
my cat used to sleep with me, and so she used to sleep either on the side or right on. Always she liked to just kind of nestle, by your feet or by your legs or whatever. And after she died, I remember. For months and months that I would just continue to feel that pressure of her coming to lay down next to me by the bed,
Yeah.
like it was you could feel it, and I
Yeah.
wasn't sleeping, I was awake, going to sleep, but you could feel that pressure continue to be there after that. And that, and I kind of lost sight of that for many years. And then I've had several spiritual experiences, a couple of dozen spiritual experiences since then that have kind of changed the way that I view life and reality. So I know exactly what you mean with that one though. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's a very distinct and familiar feeling, and you know it immediately. So we've had that multiple times. Everyone in my house has seen this ghost to the point where my daughter, she's so cute, but like her room looks into my older daughter's old room. It's empty now. It's just our guest room. And like one day I was telling her, I was just talking to her, and I went to shut her door. She has a whole upstairs to herself, right? It's like she has half the house to herself. And she was like, "Hey, can you close my door?" I was like, "Yeah, sure. Why?" I was like, "There's no one up here." She's like, "I can see the ghost in the other room, and it's kind of distracting me."
Wow.
And yeah, they have a name for her. She has a cat. They leave tea out for her and everything. It's a really cute situation.
How old's your daughter?
Well, now she's 18.
Okay. When this happened?
This was actually only about probably 3 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah. So she
Yeah.
was, 16-ish, somewhere
Yep.
in there.
But-
Very
but-
smart kid. Yeah, doesn't make stuff like this up.
Right. But
But
it
very
sound-
nonchalantly.
Yeah. But it sounds like your whole family is, open and accepting of this being there, and that probably allows the interactions to happen more often than they otherwise would.
Yeah.
I mean, if you know that that's real and that's what's happening, then yeah, things start to appear.
Yeah. I mean, a big part of it is, like I said before, like we only see and experience and hear and feel and taste and smell like a tiny sliver of what actually exists. So we have, like our brain, people think your brain creates consciousness. Your brain doesn't create consciousness. Your brain actually filters 99.9% of reality out.
Yep.
It only lets in a little bit. And once you start, like if you look at your brain as like this, like a funnel that basically takes all of reality, all the information that's available, and funnels it down to this tiny sliver, that's what your reality is based on. Well, once you start kind of opening that funnel up a little bit, you kind of crack it open a little bit and let more data in, that changes everything. And a lot of that comes from belief, because your belief systems and what you believe is possible and not possible determines what is allowed in and what's not. I think a lot of these kind of control systems are in place kind of for your own good, almost like when you have, like, say, a kindergarten and you have locks on the doors and you have rules in place and all these different things. It's to keep the kids safe. But at a certain point, those kids grow up. They don't need that anymore. They get to first grade, second grade. Okay, you don't lock the doors anymore. You get to fifth grade, sixth grade. Okay, you have less control. So I think that this earth is, I call it a simulator for consciousness development, that the consciousness comes in here as like a training grounds. And we use it the same way a pilot uses a flight simulator to become a better pilot, or consciousness comes in here in the physical to have these experiences that it can't have out in the non-physical. And knowing that there's different levels of consciousness, there's different kind of intentions for this Earth life experience, there is this control structure to this place to kind of keep it orderly and flowing. And if you look around, I mean, you said 9 billion people, that's a lot of people, all with free will, but the world operates pretty smoothly, pretty efficiently. You know, you would think it'd be complete anarchy, but it's not. And I think that the control systems are there to keep the overall system working efficiently and orderly. But at an individual level, when you wake up and you realize that you've transcended that and you don't fit in that box anymore, you have free will at an individual level to start opening up your funnel and kind of reducing your filters and allowing more information in and being more curious and exploring more and leveling up your own individual experience. Whereas I don't know if we ever can simultaneously level up the collective experience, because everybody's at a different grade level, you know? But at a individual level, you can absolutely blow the doors off and basically operate like outside of matrix mode 100%. So when I see those like control systems in place, I think they do serve a purpose, and I just think we're outgrowing them. I think collectively, I think we are outgrowing them at a collective level, but everybody's still at a different point in the spectrum.
And depending on the topic too, you know, I mean, it's like some people may be, you know, just completely open, non-resistant to a certain topic, politics or whatever, and then on religion, you know, they can become very dogmatic and, you know, and shut down. And just as an example, but yeah, it does seem like emotional intelligence, and as people continue to learn and understand these self-imposed limitations, that the Gen Pop can continue to evolve emotionally. You know, I mean, we're kind of stuck with an IQ, but EQ wise, I feel like we can continue to elevate our emotional intelligence through these what you're talking about, man. I mean, studying the nature of reality, understanding how things work, and then kind of working through that. So, I mean, to continue then, this is fascinating, and I'm thoroughly enjoying this conversation. So, to continue then along with your journey and kind of what happens next. I mean, where do you know? So you went through this deep down, you know, word where it was like, this is kind of the detox. This is the restart. You know, I've hit kind of rock bottom or whatever you want to call it, and now, you know, it's time to start, you know, finding yourself. And it was those three words, right?
Yeah.
Which was who,
where, and why, basically.
Yeah. But it's almost like who, what, where, when, why, and how. All those can be kind of, you know, those are all legitimate questions to ask about ourselves. So, but what was that then process like as you began to then, you know, kind of hit rock bottom and then begin to, you know, kind of develop into sitting here today?
Yeah, you know, the more I studied the whole process of this spiritual awakening, for lack of better words, it felt like with me, I resonated most with, there's a guy named Ishtak Bentov, and he talks a lot about the Kundalini awakening experience and how it works in your body. And that's what resonated the most with me. And when you start studying, I studied a lot of like the mystery schools, because I realized that this knowledge had been, you know, kind of passed down for eons and eons. Like none of this is new.
Right.
If anything, it's kept more from us now than it was in the past for whatever reason. But it's very well documented, the progression of the awakening experience. And basically, you know, you have kind of matrix mode. You have your moment where everything changes, whether that's a extraterrestrial experience, a spiritual apparition, a near-death experience, you know, whatever the case may be. Some people do it spontaneously. Some people do it through like forced Kundalini. And there's a fine line between psychosis and enlightenment. Like it could go either way. Like it really is. You're walking a fine line. I felt like I was going crazy several times, you know, and then I actually relieved myself, because I was like, well, if I was going crazy, I probably wouldn't be thinking that I'm going crazy. I think that a level of self-awareness is probably, it's healthy, but just knowing, anybody listening out there, if you're going through this experience, there's going to be times where it gets dark. There's going to be times where you feel like you're kind of losing your mind, because all your belief systems and all of your things that you could trust and you could depend on in your life, whether it's your parents and what they taught you, or your spiritual or your religious institutions, or our ancient history, or all these things we've been told, and you start to realize maybe they're not like exactly what we've been told, and you're like, okay, who can I trust? What can I trust? And then it turns your world upside down. That process is kind of scary and kind of confusing. But when you make it through that, you have to go through that dark night of the soul, and then you go through this like initiation type process, and you feel the support of the universe. You feel like there's something out there rooting you on. You feel like your higher self, your total self, whatever you want to call it, is almost like it's like you're the character inside the game and it's the one outside the game playing it, and you're on the same team, and it knows that you have free will and doesn't want to impede on it, but it's there to oversee and to guide, and you feel this support, and you feel like you have purpose. And when that happens, it's weird to say, but like it's everything's more colorful and brighter and happier, and you have more gratitude and appreciation, and everything just changes. But then you start, like what I did is I dove deep into these more esoteric, ancient ways of thinking and philosophies. I went deep into Stoicism. I fell in love with ancient, especially Greek philosophers and their Stoic philosophy on life. I went deep into like Hermeticism and Gnosticism, and just trying to learn as much, Plato was one of my favorites, like, because a lot of these people back then had it figured out. Well, I won't say had it. No one has it figured out, but they understood the dance between the physical and the non-physical, and they understood more what this reality is, and the temporariness of it, and the importance like of addressing your spiritual side and not getting too stuck in the material. So I started learning all of these things that you don't learn in school. They don't teach you, at least not the churches I ever went to. These weren't things that are really taught to us, especially in the Western part of the world. Reincarnation was definitely not something that I ever believed was real. And so I start having to like really go back in time to get the answers to the questions that I had now. None of this is cutting edge thinking. If anything, it's ancient thinking that we're just now starting to circle back around and apply cutting edge technological, modalities that are helping us explore it more and these kinds of things. But I was really blown away by how much comfort I was finding in these ancient texts that I was reading, and I thought that was very interesting. And now I think we're at this point where we can kind of combine and merge the ancient philosophies with our modern understanding of consciousness and things like that.
Right. And who today do you think is doing the best job of that? Who sticks out for you today?
I mean, there's a lot of people that I really enjoy. Like Tom Campbell, I like his take on things. He's a little too much in the this is all virtual and none of this is real. Like I really do like to feel that there is an objective real world, and I've even been able to go through and trace back how we went from quantum to atomic, and I understand that balance there. Obviously, when you drill down the subatomic level, everything is vortices of energy, and there is no solidity to anything. I get that. But I love Tom Campbell and his way of thinking about things. I'm not going to lie. Robert Monroe, the reason I fell in love with this stuff was because his philosophy and the way he looked at things through this kind of engineering mindset, and he became this like almost like spiritual master, but he had this very analytical, left brain guided, mechanistic way of looking at things. I really resonated with the way he talked about things and the way that he approached everything he did. So even today, I mean, there's a bunch of people out there that I really like their outlook on things, but they all seem to kind of have a narrow point of view. Not narrow, and it's just they're specialist. Like they specialize in one category. There's not a lot of people like a Robert Monroe that were able to really just look at, like, zoom all the way out and look at everything through this agnostic lens, not really colored by any real hardcore belief systems or anything, and just say, this is how reality seems to operate.
Have you read Eckhart Tolle?
I love Eckhart Tolle.
Yeah. He seems to me to be one of those guys that's been able to lift out of the 50,000 foot, and look at it from that level and not get, I mean, you can see a little bit of an ego pop in, every once in a while where it's like, okay, this it's a belief, it becomes a belief, but it's very rare for him to count. I mean, he's so conscious of what he says and how he says it that, but he's someone for me who, as I've begun this kind of new lifestyle. He made a huge impact on me 4 or 5 years ago, and continues to resonate with how I view things.
Yeah.
But
From like a totally from a mindset and philosophical point of view, I love his demeanor. He's so warm and kind and just he's so wise. I really like Eckhart
Yeah,
a lot.
yeah.
And Neville Goddard is similar. He was more of a kind of a manifestation mindset guy from back in the 20s, 30s, 40s. But he reminds me sort of Eckhart. But there's so many good spiritual and philosophical minds out there. And I've studied all of them, but I was always trying to find someone who brought it all together. And it's hard.
It's tough. Yeah. I mean, maybe no one exists.
Well, I doubt in physical form that's
Yeah,
even possible.
right.
Yeah, absolutely.
'Cause, I mean, how can you can't have all the answers. But so I guess in terms of, I want to ask one quick question and then kind of move on to more of things that are currently happening today, and then kind of like your view on some important topics that are happening today. But before we get to that, the most impactful spiritual experience that you've ever had, undoubtedly, is the near-death experience, of course. But from like an apparition standpoint, seeing an actual apparition for a period of time that you think is undeniably conclusive, and there's no way that you could have seen anything else. And is there a story or a specific event for you that kind of sticks out from from actually seeing with your own eyes a spirit with at any point in time in your life?
So we had a Bigfoot encounter at the Monroe Institute that I've talked about. I didn't see it because I was orb watching with the guys, but it's a fascinating story. But I didn't see that with my own two eyes, but the two guys that I was with did.
Yeah. Which is nothing compared to, which is very dissimilar from seeing an actual former living human being, a spirit or something.
Yeah.
I haven't dove into Bigfoot yet on this channel. I'm not opposed to it.
No.
Open to it.
Trust me, it was not anything that was even in my realm of possibility either. That was not something I was interested in. But I've learned to kind of not judge anything at this point.
Right.
So I've had personally multiple orb experiences. Like I used to when I was focused on it. I saw a silver sphere, 3 foot. My wife was with me. Clear day on the beach. We watched it come out of the sky into the ocean right in front of our faces.
Wow.
The traditional metallic sphere that people talk about.
Wow.
That was, we have that, and I don't have a picture of that. I have a picture of the UFO over our house. I have several videos of orbs that I've caught. We have a video of a translucent square with a glowing circle inside of it over our hotel in Palm Springs.
Almost like a Ryan Graves.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I shared it with him whenever he shared a video of one that he got in it was Delaware or somewhere like that over on the East Coast. And I shared my video that I have from Palm Springs with him.
That's cool.
So multiple orbs, that's something that became kind of at the beginning. It's almost like they were showing themselves to me more because at that time I needed more proof to convince my skeptical mind. That's faded away now. It's kind of funny how these things it's almost like they don't need to happen anymore because I'm beyond that point of doubting myself. But we had multiple orb sightings. I have multiple of them on video. I share all that stuff on X and everything. But they're not I got real good at discerning what's a satellite, what's a plane. We use the flight tracker when we do all this stuff. And it's, I call them ether dolphins when it comes to the orbs because we go out paddling. We live by the ocean in the panhandle of Florida. And we go out paddling all the time. And we got real good at calling in dolphins telepathically. And because all animals communicate this way. It's this is an ability that humans don't think we have. We think you have to be special or psychic, but everyone has it. It's dormant. But animals use this ability all the time, and you can telepathically communicate with your cats, with your dog, dolphins. And we'll call in dolphins, and they'll come. And when I was calling in orbs, the first time I did it was at the Monroe Institute. We're up on the mountain at night, and we have Chris Bledsoe on the phone. I'm there with Ryan, and we're literally watching them dance in the sky.
Wow.
And they kind of swim, almost like a dolphin. and they'll consciously communicate with you. You can ask them to flash, and they'll flash. You can ask them to blink, and they'll blink. So I saw enough of those things where I was just like, okay, like that's all real, obviously. I think those are actually just natural like life forms on Earth that kind of go in between the realms, kind of pass through between the physical and non-physical. I don't even think that's aliens or weird or anything. I think it's, like there was a time when we didn't know we had microbes and viruses and bacteria on our skin. Then we invented a microscope, and all of a sudden they're like, holy shit, look at there's stuff everywhere.
Well, it's every time we put a big telescope into the sky, it's like, holy shit. Well, we didn't know that. We didn't know that. And everything, all the assumptions crumble, everything that we thought we knew was real crumbles. And so, like I said earlier, we're making all these decisions on false reality, across all different spectrums.
Because our funnel is so small. We're funneling, Aldous Huxley is the one who proposed that theory, almost 100 years ago, that like our brain wasn't creating consciousness or our reality. It was actually funneling and filtering most of it out. Now we've been able to prove it through modern neuroscience that's exactly what the brain does. It filters out most of reality because it'd just be too much for us, But yeah, like when you start filtering in more of reality, you're not imagining that. You're just allowing in more stuff that's already there. And I think that now we're just seeing more things. It's maybe like our hardware, which is the physical bodies, our hardware, our souls, our software, but our hardware is almost like it's evolving and maybe it's upgrading. It's like when you get a new camera and all of a sudden it's got more megapixels, or you get an infrared camera and now you can see a whole other world that you didn't know existed.
Yep.
I think that maybe our physical bodies are upgrading, at the same time our consciousness is upgrading. Maybe there's a intrinsic link there. But for me, I haven't seen that I can recall like a apparition besides the shadow beings, but they're frustrating because they're there and you see them, but there's literally no detail. It's like that. There's that paint, they called it Phantom Black, Phanta Black, that like literally shows no shadows or highlights. It's just a void. That's what they're like. It's it's there. Like you can sense its presence, but and you can see the outline. And that's how the Bigfoot story at the Monroe Institute was. It was a black 7 foot tall or so shadow with red eyes that was at the grass line.
Wow.
And
seen by how many people?
2.
Okay.
Yep. Good friends, guys that don't lie, guys that you can trust. And we're up on top of the mountain. We're orb watching, and they walked to the tree line, and it's pitch black out there. You can't see anything except what the moon highlights. And we're like, okay, whatever. I don't know why they're going over there. We're all orb watching, right, as a group. And then when they came back up, I was like, hey, what's up? And they're like, you'll never believe what happened. We're like, what? They're like, there was this big shadow being with these red eyes in the woods. And I was like, why didn't you like holler at us? Why didn't you run? They're like, we couldn't. They were like stuck basically. And
so shadow being with red eyes, why Bigfoot?
Okay. So here's the thing. They didn't say Bigfoot. So and I hope she doesn't mind me saying this, but my wife is a natural medium. Okay. So she communicates with the other side very fluently and very easily. And she delivers messages from, people that pass over all the time. She's very, very good at it. And she, before I went, was remote viewing where I was going, just kind of, getting a lay of the land. And she told me that when she did that, almost like a drone looking down, that at one point a Bigfoot stepped out of the forest or the trees and looked at her and waved and made eye contact. And she's like, oh, hey, sorry, Bigfoot. And he said, you can call me Yeti. Right? Just very random, and then slip back into the woods.
Wow.
Okay, so this is happening in her mind, right? This isn't real life, okay?
Yeah.
So we think. Yeah. And so she tells me that, and I'm like, oh, that's cool. I guess I have a protector there. Come to find out, they already know all this at the Institute. They know that there's a dragon that they know about that circles above the mountain. I'll get into more of that in a minute. It's freaking nuts. But they already knew that they have these protective beings there because it's a portal. And that's what the Bigfoot do. They guard portals and openings. So it's a whole thing.
Okay.
Yeah. And so anyways.
I didn't know that. Yeah.
I didn't either. Yeah. So she's telling me this. I'm like, that's cool. Don't really know what to think about
Yetis, not Bigfoot.
Yeah. And big smile, waved, nice, friendly guy. So anyways, so when all this is happening and they're telling me, they're describing it, the description that they gave me was almost identical to what Sarah had given me, right? But they didn't know what Sarah had told me, right? They didn't know because she even said it had red eyes, and that's not like a bad thing, a scary thing. It's just people describe that all the time. Like even Chris Bledsoe and Ryan Bledsoe said that the beings that they saw had these glowing red eyes.
Right.
So that tends to be a thing. we think about it as that must be demonic or evil because I don't know, we associate red with that, but I think it's just
It's just their eye
a
color,
thing.
man.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't hate my eye color.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyways, like the way they described the being, because they're face to face essentially with it, was almost identical to what Sarah had described. In the location, it was right, like we're in this like kind of an opening of the forest, like a field where they have this gigantic rose quartz crystal, and we're there. And at the tree line is exactly where it was. That's exactly where Sarah said she saw it. So anyways, it all matched up. So I can just assume that it's the same being. I have no way of knowing, but that's
big, man.
So, and then that night, so we're all orb watching, we have that encounter. So the Monroe Institute, it's 6 days, and you sleep in these like check units. It's a controlled, holistic, environmental containment or something like that. Anyways, it's a sensory deprivation booth that you sleep in. And we're all in our rooms, and we retired for the night. And then first thing in the morning, you go and you do your debrief, and then you get your mission, and you go back to the room, and you go through all these things. It's very, very interesting. And that night, I went back to the room, and I had something in the room with me. Like, just knew it was there. And I had a room by myself. Everyone had a room by themselves because they have a lot of rooms there, and there was only like 12 of us or so there. And I had something in the room with me. I knew it was in the room with me. I could feel something outside the window looking in. I couldn't sleep all night. Okay, go in the morning to our debrief, right? And, all the people are there that I talked about. Everyone there was like some sort of a celebrity or an influencer, right? All big names. Everyone was like, kind of like pale-faced, white-faced, like they hadn't slept well, seen a ghost. The girl next to me couldn't sleep in her room, had to leave her room because she said there was something in the room with her. She ended up being freaked out the whole rest of the time there and couldn't focus or anything and hightailed it back to Europe. Every single person that was there in the debrief that morning said that they felt something in the room with them. They couldn't sleep. I mean, it was wild.
Mm-hmm.
So, and we didn't have any communication with each other. We're all just showing up and everyone just looks like shit because no one slept. And it wasn't like a bad thing, but there was a presence in the room with every single person there.
And that's you're depriving your senses. You're taking away the stimulation. You're taking away phones. You're taking away interaction with other people. You're just left there with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And so your mind is, inactive. And so it's not filtering as much stuff probably that's coming in through it. And so and I'm sure it's a very energetic and spiritually just wild place. But that's crazy, man. It makes total sense for sure that people would have these experiences within there though.
So the way it was explained to me, this was after the fact, we were told that our trip there was a little more paranormal than the average ones.
Okay.
There was a lot of energy there. Skip Atwater, who used to be the CEO of the Monroe Institute, I heard him explain it this way. So, okay, it's like if we went into a submarine and we went down into the densities of the ocean and we went down all the layers of the ocean, we would see new life forms and it would change. Like reality changes the deeper you get in the ocean. It gets weird down there. But it's hard for us to go down there. You have to have like a submarine. So if you think about, we're in the same kind of a density in relation to, let's say, a interdimensional, higher dimensional beings and intelligences, right? That live out there. Like 99+% of the universe is non-physical. We're actually an anomaly in this physical world. There's ancient life forms and intelligences and consciousnesses out there. Well, instead of them trying to traverse this density and get in their submarines and come down here, which I think a lot of what we call UFOs are actually literally like interdimensional submarines that actually, submerge through these densities to come down here. Instead of having to go through all that, why don't they allow us to come up to them? Well, they would gather at an observation point where people routinely go and traverse the densities and go up to their point of view as opposed to them trying to come down to our point of view. The Monroe Institute is one of those observation points for interdimensionals and non-human intelligences to wait for human consciousnesses to leave the density of this physical matter reality and go up to their world where they can interact with us there. That's exactly what happened. I had multiple experiences with non-human intelligences there. And after I left the Institute and I was trying to make sense of everything that happened, that's what Skip said in one of his interviews. And I was like, that nails it. Like, that's what it felt like. It felt like I was going to their world and they were waiting, or at least they were available. They were there. And so I say all that because, it's not out of the realm of possibility for one of them to maybe hitchhike back down or tag along or something like that. And maybe that happens there. And maybe that's why there are like the Bigfoot guardians and that kind of stuff there, just to kind of protect that sacred place, because that place is very sacred. Even the way Robert Monroe is guided to buying, he owns basically the whole mountain. It's nuts. Joe McMonagle lives there. He came and taught me
Really?
remote viewing. Yeah,
Okay.
personally trained us. It was amazing.
Yeah.
But he lives there on the mountain, and it's a very sacred mountain. It has a very, very spiritual feel to it. And it seems like it's a place where we go to this. We are able to traverse the dimensions and meet with these other non-human extra-dimensional beings, and I think they're probably able to hitch a ride and come back down.
Yeah, fascinating. So let's jump back into the Matrix for just one quick question. In terms of your social media following, where are you most active, and where are you at?
So I'm probably most active on X. I grew a huge TikTok following, and all my stuff blew up over there. But then I kind of, I don't know, I lost joy with that platform, and they kept banning me. I kept getting in trouble over there. So I went to X because I felt like I was a little safer to speak my mind.
Sure.
And
Why did they ban you? What were you saying?
oh man, I did a video a day for 2 years, and I talked about all sorts of stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
and you never know what the like keywords are and stuff
Right.
until it happens.
Right.
Funny enough, the last thing that got me banned, and I won't say it here because I don't want to get in trouble, but it was about health. It was about the C word, and I was literally like citing
The 5-letter C word.
yeah.
Yeah.
I was citing a study from Rhonda Patrick about how high intensity interval training can flush out circulating tumor cells and all this kind of stuff. And that got me in a lot of trouble. And I was like, whoa, okay. So it was funny because I usually talk about aliens and interdimensionals and all this stuff, but health was what got me in the most trouble. But I had already had so many strikes leading up to that. And then it was like a 6-month period where my stuff just got throttled. I mean, I had 400,000 followers, and I had 200 million views in my first 2 years. And it was just rocking and rolling, and then nothing. So now X, and I have a podcast that comes out twice a week that's on Spotify and YouTube. So YouTube and X, but I talk probably way more than I should on X because it's just it's everything.
Yeah, cool. Love it. So what are the key things right now that you're most focused on and interested in? Like if you were the biggest heavy hitter, in terms of like your the projects now that you're working on and talking about.
So my big thing through all of this, because it's all endlessly fascinating, and I love just diving down all these rabbit holes and everything, is how we can use it in our daily life. Like, what good does it do us? And I love, just as much as the next guy going down these rabbit holes and exploring, how many different alien life forms are there and how many dimensions and all this kind of stuff. And I love exploring them. Like, actually, anyone who says any of this is BS, I implore you just go do it yourself. Like, we have the tools now to personally become a consciousness explorer and see all this stuff for yourself. And as much as I love doing all that, I always come back to how can I use this information and knowledge to live a better life, a more fulfilling life, a happier, more, loving, peaceful, productive life. And that's what led me to, I created something called, I gave it a name, the law of probability. And that's my framework for what I use to basically take your power back and become a co-creator of your life by using all these principles and everything I found. So I went deep into, philosophy and spirituality, but also neuroscience and basically how reality works, how it went from a quantum world to a physical world, because I think that's a very important tipping point there. And when you understand that our physical world is quantum by nature and you understand that it operates by quantum principles, you can use those to your advantage. And it's really, really fascinating. And that really opened me up to, it brought all these different worlds together and synthesized them, which I thought was really cool. But it made sense of so many discrepancies, so many things I couldn't make sense of before. Now all of a sudden are beautifully explained in a way that literally you can use to your advantage, And I think that's, for me personally, it's the most important part.
Love it. So I'm going to ask you a trick question here, because this podcast studio is actually a time warp. It's probably guarded by a Yeti. There's probably some Yeti walking around that we haven't seen. But
hopefully,
how many minutes do you think we've been in here so far?
Just because I know time goes faster in these situations, I would say 30, but I know it's more like 60.
Yeah, I think it's more like an 75 or 80 or something.
What?
So yeah, we're ready for a break.
That's wild.
It's crazy, man. Time flies in this place. I'm totally vibing with this conversation. It's fascinating, and it's really cool to get to know you. So what I'd like to do is take a quick break, get a bite to eat, and kind of regroup and close out with just a banger of a second half.
Let's do it.
All right, awesome. Well, good. Well, welcome back, and we just checked out the Vases, and so it might be a good segue into Egypt. But any thoughts on the Vases worth sharing?
I mean, it's such an impressive collection that you have, but just seeing that, we like to think in short scale. So we're like, oh, humans now are capable of all these impressive things. And we like to think of like ancient humans as being inferior, cavemen, hunter-gatherers. But then you see stuff like that and you're like, I don't even know if we could do that now. I mean, some of that stuff is just so beautiful and precise and so much intention behind it, and it's inspiring to see that humans have always been capable of these amazing things. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we could do it now. It would just take a long time if you're carving them. I mean, you could certainly do it now with a high end machine, but I mean, if you're doing it by hand, it's going to take you years to complete one of those things. And
Yeah.
The precision question is of course interesting because there's a lot of talk with Max now, who's put out some information that aligns with his perspective on the topic, but very confusing from a software standpoint to understand all the details of the software and how it's analyzing the things to really understand if there's anything to that. But I think what he's saying is that the precise ones are not consistent with the other pre-dynastic vases that he's measured, and the precise ones are consistent with modern technology, just from a precision standpoint. And so it's pretty interesting. But there's,
we know for a fact we have found many ancient artifacts that show that back then they were capable of making extraordinary stuff, and that was a part of their culture, was making these beautiful, like very robust. I mean, things that probably did take them years to make. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Is the boxes in the Serapeum consistent with modern machinery, for example? And he's not saying they're modern. He's saying they're consistent with modern machinery. So are there's plenty of ancient sites that are consistent with what we could do today, or even better than what we could do today.
Yeah.
So
that also pulls into play, did they maybe have what we call modern machinery back then? I mean, there's a lot of sites around the world, Geolithic sites, that are hard for us to explain without using some sort of precision engineering and machinery. So maybe they had access to these things that we don't think they did. I mean, who knows? I mean, they even found, 60,000 years ago, they found that jewelry in that cave in Russia from the Denisovans.
Right.
That's 60,000 years ago, and it looked like it was drilled with a drill bit.
It was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe they had a manual way to do that, but that's still what we would call modern machinery.
Right.
60,000 years ago.
Yeah, that was not in the official historical record. I mean, now they're scrambling to explain all the stuff that they find, and that's what I love the most about the ancient civilization community is just how much stuff they find and how many discrepancies and inconsistencies they find and point out, and it is rewriting. As much as the mainstream hates open-minded thinkers, it's rewriting the narrative, and it's helping them get their story straight. So it's really, there should be appreciation, I think, for people who are thinking about things with an open mind.
Yeah. I always say the truth does not mind being challenged. Like, if it's true, bring it, because it'll still be true in the end.
Yeah.
So I think, anybody if you're just trying to get to the truth, if you're trying to figure out like what our history was about and what happened, so that hopefully we can glean some information about any sort of cycles or cyclical patterns that we might, want to be looking out for in the future. I think if we're just trying to get to the truth, you would invite all sorts of different perspectives.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, the truth needs no defense.
Yeah.
So why are they defending?
People they get very, it's a very sensitive subject when you question the history, and I don't understand that.
Yeah, I do, because it's an ego thing. It's become a part of themselves, and they feel like when people question the data that they're laying out to people, that it's a direct attack on them, because it's their ego. It's associated with them as an individual. This is my belief. Once it turns into a belief, and it's no longer, I'm pretty sure about this, or I'm 90% sure. Once it turns into a belief, then that's when things get defended and argued and combative and, very, very ugly sometimes. So that's the situation that exists in every field, but it's just, it leads to like you said, awakening. It leads to that, those conflicts leads to wanting to let go and wanting to, be open and communicate and talk with people and figure these things out so that we can, really get to the bottom of things. So I'm with you. I'm optimistic about the future.
Yeah. I think a big part of it, I always describe us as we're a fusion of two beings. We're a higher self and a human self. So, we're this non-eternal or non-physical eternal consciousness that is in a way streamed into this physical avatar. And when we become too aligned with this physical avatar, when we let the ego take over and we suppress that consciousness down, then we do things like that. We create our identity around very specific topics. We take ownership of that topic because we align that topic, whatever it is, with our identity. That becomes us. I'm Joe, the archaeologist, or I'm Bob the doctor, right? And then when you do that, then you, of course, are going to defend it because that's you. It's a part of you.
Right.
But you have to have this more, you got to zoom out a little bit. You have to become less, aligned with your human self and more aligned with your higher self and look at everything from more of a bird's eye view. That this whole thing, this physical body is like a temporary sojourn. Like, we know that, I won't say we know, it's becoming very clear now, especially with even empirical evidence now, that reincarnation is a thing, that you have a more higher self, a total self, that's an accumulation of all your lifetimes, and that you probably have had multiple lifetimes in the past, maybe dozens, maybe hundreds on Earth and off Earth, and you'll probably have more in the future. And when you look at things that way, you look at, okay, I'm just playing this character right now. This character might be very good at science or archaeology or art or math or whatever, but that's a temporary thing. So you want to take it seriously. You want to play this game the best to your ability, get everything you can out of it, but know that this is not eternal. This is temporary. So you kind of have to have that balance. And when you do that, it shrinks the ego because you're no longer completely looking at everything through this first person point of view. And it allows you to kind of look at other perspectives and see things from other points of view and say, you know what? I see what you're saying. I didn't used to think that, but now I do, because you're not locked into one point of view.
Yeah. It goes back to your original question. Who am I? I am who. And so, when you look at that conglomeration of self-identifications or whatever it might be of that character, that movie character that creates the me, it's a big ball of an identity that I've created. I am a CEO. I am a whatever it is that we latch onto and and defend and all of that. It's like a ball, and it's letting go piece by piece and allowing that ball of ego to be able to shrink down, to something that, what am I left with? Who am I? Okay, so if I'm not this, what's left? Okay, am I okay letting go of this? Do I want to hold on to this? For me, Gators, the Florida Gators are a part of my ego. Mm-hmm. That's a part of who I am a Florida Gator. That's one that I would say because, and it's lessened. It's 99% less than it used to be, but I know I'm making a conscious choice. I have free will to decide. Do I want to identify as with the school that I went to and that my father went to and that his father went to and that my son is currently at?
Yeah.
So it's a difficult one for me to let go to right now. I'm choosing not to, but we can pick and choose. I want to be this. I don't want to be this. And it's all in the matrix. There's so many of those things that create our individual mind-made identities that we can pick and choose. I'm going to hold on to this. I'm going to let go of this. I know that by holding on to this one thing, that it's going to cause these ups and downs, these emotional swings. It's going to cause me to judge things. It's going to cause me to defend. It's going to cause me to get into some arguments, and I know that, and knowing that and still choosing to hold on to it is, it's you could call it insane, you could call it free will, you could call it, temporary, but it's just a part of that human experience. I think that's, it's beautiful. You know? Yeah.
100%. I've had people ask this question a lot to me. They say, okay, if you go through this sort of a spiritual awakening kind of a thing, how do you have like encounters with aliens and all the things that I've done, and just go back to like working a job, going grocery shopping, taking your kids to school, that kind of stuff. And you have to remember that we chose to come in here. It's a voluntary thing. This isn't a prison planet. And part of the reason we do the reincarnation loop so frequently is because we are more or less addicted to the Earth life experience. It's fun. And people will be like, oh, it's not fun, it's torturous, or maybe their life isn't going good or whatever. But it's like, hey, like we literally simulate, like we'll play like Call of Duty, and we'll put ourselves in a first person thing of like World War I, this like torturous event, and we'll like have fun doing it. It's like, why would you do that? It's like, well, because maybe your life is good and you want to experience something that's not or whatever. So when you're in the non-physical state, this whole experience is fun. It's amazing. It's addicting. It's thrilling. The emotions, the highs, the lows, the overcoming adversity, the heartbreak, the losing stuff, the gaining it back. That's why you'll see people, they'll build up a life, destroy it, build it back up. It's at a point, it's the experience. You just want the experience. So my answer to that is like, how do you go back to living in the Matrix when you've seen the other side? And it's like, well, it's fun. Like, but you have to understand it for what it is. So you can have these things. There's teams I root for, there's things that I identify myself as and with, but I try to have like, strongly held beliefs that are held loosely. You know what I mean? Like you never want to hold anything with like a death grip. You always want to say, you know what, I might be wrong, or I'm open to that, or maybe I'm into this now, but I won't be in 5 years or whatnot. It doesn't define me.
Are you open to being wrong about reincarnation?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're not totally grasping. That's not a belief. That's are you at 100% on reincarnation, or are you, what percent are you?
You know what? 6 years ago, I would have said I'm at a 0.
Yeah.
Now I would put it at an 80.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's about where I am too on reincarnation. And it's one of those things that it can't be a knowing, like it can't be like your spiritual experience. That spirituality is real. You know who you truly are. You know that the life that you are is within this shell. Like you've experienced that. So that's a knowing for you. So, but with reincarnation, I think that it if we take it to 100, we take it to belief, and I'm intentionally not latching onto that, but I do feel like it's one of the more interesting belief systems that could create a better world for humanity. Just because if you know that you have to come back to this place, you might treat it a little bit differently.
Yeah.
You might do things differently during this life if that's the reality. And again, it gets back to like finding what is reality. What is this place that we're in? What are the rules? What are the systems? What's the math? Like what's the physics and that supports the reality? So anyways.
Yeah, I actually think that simulation theory in certain ways is dangerous for people to adopt, because it takes away that responsibility of, okay, if this is all virtual and none of this is real, it doesn't matter what I do, right? And I object to that, because we've proven there is actually empirical evidence, especially through Dr. Ian Stevenson, who works at the University of Virginia and has amazing, thousands and thousands of case studies and lots of empirical evidence of taking. He was a child psychiatrist and researcher, and children would come and remember past lives. Okay, and this is pretty common, especially up to age 5, 6, 7, and they would take it a step further, and they would go and investigate all these past lives and track down, the past lives and verify everything. And they did this dozens and dozens of times. Even they have something called a death mark, which is literally a physical manifestation of so the birthmark that you have in this life is basically a physical carryover from a death mark in a past life. So they'd have kids that remembered being murdered in a certain way in a past life.
Wow.
Yeah, and they would even tell them exactly how they were murdered in a past life, and on their new physical body, they would have a birthmark in that place, and oftentimes it was accompanied by scar tissue.
Wow.
What didn't make any sense, because the parents would verify this kid's never been injured there. And all sorts of these things. People that were born with deformities, like literally limbs that didn't generate all the way, where in a past life that limb was cut off. And this is like a carryover of this like energetic trauma that manifests in genetic form. And we've seen this through so many different, cases, in not only the physical part, but the memories, the carryover from the memories. I mean, my wife does past life regression, so we see this every day in my house and in our practice. But even, outside of our personal scale, this is being studied on a grand scale. One of my favorite researchers, Dr. Michael Newton, has over 7,500 case studies of taking people to the life between lives. He was
This is Journey of Souls.
Yeah, Journey of Souls,
That is
Destiny of
so
Souls.
weird, because Journey of Souls, I just popped that thought into my head. I was just thinking, I guarantee you Jordan has read Journey of Souls and knows it very well. And
One of my favorite books.
And then you say it. That's really, really, Schumann resonance is highly active.
Have you read it?
I have, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he not only discusses reincarnation, and he was a clinical hypnotherapist who was definitely skeptical about this whole world. And it just started happening so much. And he was taking people into a deeper level of trance for his hypnotherapy, and they started going to past lives. So then, it happened more and more. So then he started saying, okay, let's investigate this realm between lives, this life between lives. And he would take people there, and he was very careful not to guide them in any certain way and bias it in any way. And he would just ask them, okay, what do you see? What do you see? And he did this so many times that he chronicled it all and found all this overlap, people describing the same areas, the same experiences, even giving it roughly the same names of these areas, like the Hall of Destiny and the Council of Elders and these areas, these elements of the afterlife, that he was left completely convinced that not only is reincarnation real, but there's a spirit world. The spirit world has a hierarchy. It has an organizational system to it. There's different levels to it. There's different activities and things you do based on your consciousness level and development. That is a whole thing. And it's very human-like and Earth-like, because the spirit world is just another layer of Earth. It's a non-physical layer around Earth, kind of like a waiting area or a loading zone. And it's just endlessly fascinating.
It is, yeah. And I guess you could call it a dimension or a spiritual dimension or the spiritual world or whatever you might call it. But then and so in addition to that may tie into the UAP phenomenon, and we don't need to go necessarily down a deep UAP phenomenon rabbit hole right now, but I mean, when you look at the things that are happening from an energy standpoint, and you look at what people are reporting with orbs and with black cubes with red or with glowing spheres around them, it seems to be a very energetic phenomenon at times. And so, could there be a tie-in? It was actually our mutual friend Chris Ramsey who came on the show, and we had a phenomenal conversation. And he recommended the book Journey of Souls. I hadn't heard of it prior, but I downloaded it and listened to it, and yeah, it's mind blown. I mean, the guy is he's done the research. It's consistent from person to person to person what they're seeing and experiencing, and so yeah, for me, that elevated the likelihood of reincarnation from a low number to something above 50%. Something between 50 and 100. So.
Dive into Ian Stevenson next. He's good for us left brain analytical thinkers because he has laid out a tremendous amount of empirical evidence showing, pictures, case studies, research, evidence. It makes it really hard to dismiss. I mean, it's an overwhelming amount of information.
So what's happening, right? Like, is it like is there some higher intelligence that is like, controlling our souls, I mean, that's where the people from the book seem to get a little bit lost. It's like, for me at least, it was like, well, we don't really know who's behind all of this, So
yeah.
So for you, who do you think, like, what like some people might say, well, that's God, and other people might say, oh, it's just combined intelligence, and these are the intelligences that are the peak of the intelligence within the universe, and others might have another explanation. But what do you think is, if this spiritual kind of recycling of our souls, and we're greeted by these entities when we die, and they take us to this place, and we meet these other spirits that are a part of our group, they're a part of our family. We align with these other souls, and we plan out our next lives. I mean, this is essentially what the book is talking about through experiencers that have been, hypnotically regressed. And so what do you think is really behind that?
It's multi-layered, and the more you look into it, the more you see everything you said is true and a lot more. There is a non-human component to the afterlife, because if you think about what our afterlife is, it's returning to the non-physical. The non-physical is base level reality. That's why, like in my theory, I call it simulator theory, because like how a pilot goes into a simulator to become a better pilot, that information carries over to his real life world, and he can apply it to his job. But while he's in the simulator, that's virtual. That's not real. That's not base level. Our consciousness comes into this physical world for that same purpose, to learn energy manipulation, to learn cause and effect, to learn how to control our emotions, because out there, we manifest at the speed of thought. Everything works way differently. So you come here to control your thoughts, your emotions, and really kind of level up at a consciousness level. It's training. So when we return in the afterlife, what we call the afterlife is the non-physical. And it's encapsulated around Earth. So there is this non-physical layer around Earth. That's what we call the spirit world. And it's very human because it's full of human souls, human consciousnesses that are at some point of their journey back and forth. But you're still in the non-physical realm. Well, what we're learning now is a lot of intelligences and consciousnesses from all different backgrounds, all different ways, shapes, and forms, most of them ancient, exist in the non-physical world. So when you're in the afterlife, now you're in their world, because that's more base level reality. And of course, there's going to be, I'm actually surprised there's not more alien encounters in the afterlife, but there are quite a few of them. And to me, it makes perfect sense, because they're not like invading our world. At that point, we're just back in the greater cosmos and the greater reality. And of course, there's all sorts of things. Now, it's mostly human, but it's not all human. In fact, none of it's human, but it's mostly human-based consciousnesses. That's why things over there are still very Earth-like. You go to school, there's this like kind of school-type environment they go over there where you kind of review your past life, you meet with your soul cluster, you plan your next incarnation, you have your kind of your counsel with your guides, and kind of review what you did right and wrong in the past life. It has a very
Spirit
human
guides.
Yeah, spirit guides, yeah. It's very Earth-like because it's created, it's influenced by our experiences here. It's just another level of it. But to your bigger question is, okay, who's running it? Who's outside of that? I went back to like the Tibetan Book of the Dead and started researching, how they see, the flow of consciousness and through the Bardo states. And they describe a very similar thing, where you basically have three options when you die. You can go into the clear light, which is basically like taking a hard left, like, and that releases you from this reincarnation loop, the samsara loop. Or you can go straight into the light, and that takes you through the flow. Or you can eventually graduate and leave it all behind, and you have the ability at that point to completely separate from this physical existence, or to stay and hang out and be a guide. And that was, 1,700 years ago or so, whenever they were writing that. And that's exactly what we see now, using, more modern metaphors and everything now, but it's the same situation where you can take a hard left and just get out of here if you have escape velocity. Even though I'll double click on that in a second because I think it's more complicated than that. You can obviously just go back into the flow. And in that book, they talk about this like magnetic flow where the people, it's almost like a soul conveyor belt. You kind of just are taken to your next destination. You don't have a lot of free will in there. But then there's also another option where at a certain point, when you've optimized your experiences, learned everything you came here to learn, and you've grown at such a spiritual level, you can graduate. You can ascend beyond all of that conditioning and control system and be a guide and be a helper, be a guardian of this. Just like when you go to school and you graduate, you can leave, go on your merry way, or you can stay and be a teacher's aide or a teacher or a guide or, professor, whatever you want to be. So those options seem to exist. So to answer your question, who's above it? I think most of who's above the human Earth life experience are previous humans. I think that humans have been doing this for millions of years. That we're not the only advanced level human. We're just the current one.
And we're operating the system within our geographical region of the universe. But maybe there's another system on another planet, and it's operated by a consciousness that is primarily not human. Could be. I guess,
probably
right?
countless of those.
Yeah. And so, I mean, when you look at so that's kind of what your best guess is, I guess, in terms of like the operation of it, right? And so a lot of your thoughts on afterlife and comes from the experiencers themselves, and from the book, The Journey of Souls, and from the actual experiencers that and from research and from historical, and you're going back 1,700 years, and so there is a lot of data and information that supports what you're saying.
Yeah. These largely aren't my thoughts. This is a consensus of so much. I mean, when I had and I don't even like to call mine a near-death experience. It was an out-of-body experience. I was brought on by nearly dying, but I didn't do that crossing over to the other side fully, like a traditional near-death experience. But when you study, I started studying that world because I wanted to kind of make sense of what was going on with me. And when you study the world of near-death experiences, NDEs, it's so fascinating. I mean, there are, I guarantee you there's millions of them, but there's at least thousands documented. And of course they're anecdotal. It's a person's subjective experience, but you're talking about there's thousands of them out there. And there's so many books and podcasts where you can see these. Most of these people have never heard of the other people. They don't, you know what I mean? These are these personal subjective experiences that are so similar. I mean, the overlap is uncanny. By and large, like 80 to 90% of them say that they're extremely positive, that they were left hopeful for the afterlife, not scared. They're no longer scared in their current life. Their fear diminishes, their anxiety diminishes. They, a lot of times, don't even want to come back to this physical world because they're like, how am I going to fit? They see the totality of themselves and they're like, how am I going to fit all of this in that little freaking meat suit? Like, it's not possible. And the idea of that's scary. So you just by studying near-death experiences, it gives you such a broader view of like the bigger reality, the bigger picture. And I think that's a great place for people to start because it's fascinating, it's entertaining. A lot of them are very inspiring and heartfelt experiences, and there are endless number of them. I mean, so many. Right. So that's a great place to start. And then, you start going into more of the scientific literature and research, and then you go into more of the ancient. Okay, people have been researching this for thousands of years. And then you talk to shamans, and then you talk to Buddhist monks, and then you talk to cutting edge consciousness researchers, and you know what I mean? And they're all saying the same thing.
Right.
None of this is new.
No, it's very consistent for sure. So yeah, it's fascinating stuff, man. What else? What other topics did we want to cover? Oh, the Egypt thing. We kind of started down that path with the vases and then didn't get back to it. But there's a lot happening right now within Egypt. You had some great thoughts. Excuse me. You had some great thoughts, observations, over lunch that we were talking through. What is it about Egypt that you think is like the biggest single thing for you that you'd like to cover on this show?
Yeah, Egypt is, I mean, it's got most of the world's attention right now. Everyone that's not infighting about politics and stuff are really, I mean, it really nurtures the imagination because we look at these pyramids. These aren't some things that we're reading about in books. You can go there and touch them. They exist. They are so big, they're so massive, they're so beautiful, and they're so precisely created with mathematics and sacred geometry. There's so much to them that makes it obvious that they're not typical. They were built for a very specific purpose. In fact, things like the fact that it's actually an 8-sided pyramid. It doesn't have 4 sides. That each side in the very center is bowed out by like 1 degree, and you can only see that on the spring and fall equinoxes of each year. And you can only see it from directly above because when the sun hits it at just the right time of the day, it casts a shadow and it turns into an 8-sided pyramid. Why?
Yeah.
Why did they do that? So there's so many anomalies and so many things that are just so fascinating that how could you not be in love with it? And now
ancient architects, I think it was ancient architects, Matt Simpson, who I've been in contact with for a couple of years now. Very, very smart guy. He's challenged that on one of his videos, and I didn't get to a conclusion on it or research it enough. But I think what he was basically saying was that potentially rainfall for the last several thousand years coming off of the top of the pyramid could have carved little channels out of each of the 4 sides. And that, of course, you're going to see it on the equinox because it faces directly north-south, but it's like east-west. But I don't know, man.
But all 4 sides wouldn't be carved out identically.
Yeah.
Right? That would be pretty amazing.
Yeah, I don't know. But
it's possible.
It's an interesting. Yeah. I was blown away by the equinox thing, and then kind of started to think about what the pyramid might have actually looked like in its heyday, and then it was just a little bit of a downer to watch that other video. But I don't know what.
Well, it's not just that. You have to take it all in. So the Sphinx is aimed due east, right? Like perfectly situated, and on the spring equinox, the sun comes up over the horizon perfectly in the gaze of the Sphinx. I mean, just dead eye. So the Sphinx was perfectly positioned for the spring equinox. And on that same day, the 4-sided pyramid turns into an 8-sided pyramid. I can't think that that's a coincidence. That's very precise.
Right.
And there has to be a reason for it. Because why would they do that? I mean, you're not talking about moving Lego bricks around. These things were built from the ground up very precisely with a big picture point of view. These weren't temporary buildings. And I think that's something that's hard for modern humans to wrap their minds around, that scope and scale of a construction project, an engineering project, a design project, and what they built it for. What was the purpose? So I think just base level, it's very fascinating and very inspiring. And then there's obviously a bunch of mystique around it. Edgar Cayce talks about how under the right paw, in between the right paw and the Nile, there's the Atlantean Archive. So the Hall of Records, what he called it, which was basically what the survivors of the Atlanteans put in there. He believes they built the pyramids and the Sphinx, and that they put that library in there as a record of human history, how the last cataclysm unfolded, how the Atlanteans contributed to it, and also how they survived it. And that this was information that at a certain time humans would get access to again because it would be pertinent, because they believe this is a cyclical type of a cataclysm or a reset. So Edgar Casey's talking about that. So that's very interesting. He was a sleeping prophet. He made some pretty accurate predictions in the past. Yep. Not all of them, but if you believe that our future is probabilistic and not deterministic, you'll understand that you can't predict the future. You can just predict probabilities, and you can get close sometimes. But the fact a lot of his big predictions came true gives him some credibility, and he's a very fascinating guy. So there's a guy named Stephen Schwartz, who is one of the most famous remote viewers of all time. He's done some big projects, 2050 projects, one of his biggest ones, seeing this, cyclical cataclysm and reset coming up in the future. And he worked for the Navy as a remote viewer for them. And he was tasked with his team of remote viewers. He has like an army of remote viewers in a special system called Mobius that he uses to parse through the data. It's amazing. And he's predicted all sorts of things, even found many archaeological sites. He actually has a book, something along the lines of remote viewing for archaeology, something like that. You would love it. Super fascinating. And he was tasked to remote view underneath the Sphinx for the same purpose, So that's really interesting. And then SRI, Stanford Research Institute, who did Project Stargate and all that, they were even tasked to come and investigate below the Sphinx using acoustical methods, not even remote viewing, because they'd already done all that. So there's a big emphasis on what's underneath the Sphinx, So, I was paying attention to all this, and then Ryan Bledsoe, who is a good friend of mine. I've done several podcasts with him and hung out with him at the Monroe Institute. Got to know his dad, Chris. Chris Bledsoe is such a genuine, just one of the nicest people you'll ever meet. And love his story.
Yeah.
And he talks about the lady, and the lady told him that a new knowledge would be bestowed upon humanity, and it was going to happen at the Sphinx, when the gaze of the Sphinx, and they talk about the Red Star Regulus and all the stuff. And so I dove into all that, and because she said it could be around Easter of 2026, which is right around the corner. So it's like, okay, so that's fascinating. We'll know pretty soon if any of this is true or not. So I started looking into it, and I was like, okay, she talks about a new information, a new knowledge would be bestowed upon humanity that was going to be very important. And I was like, okay, what's this new information going to be? Like, is the lady going to come down and give some celestial TED talk and just tell us all this stuff? It's like, I doubt it. It doesn't seem like her style. She's a little more mysterious, like a typical woman, right? Likes to stay out of the scene, a little more mysterious, more questions than answers. So I was like, she's not just going to tell us everything. So what is this new information that's going to come from this Sphinx? When you start to put it all together and you realize, oh, maybe it's not Sphinx, maybe it's not the lady, maybe it's the archive underneath the Sphinx. And the paw is supposed to be the doorway, and it leads to this tunnel, and somewhere in between the paw and the Nile is this Atlantean archive, the Hall of Records. So anyways, I don't know, but that would make sense of where this information is coming from, why the Sphinx is so important. So then I started looking into, she said around Easter, well, March 20th is the spring equinox, and obviously the Sphinx is aligned perfectly with the spring equinox. It seems to activate certain things at that area. That's 2 weeks before Easter, because I heard Chris say around Easter, and people go back and forth and argue all about the dates, and he's even kind of changed it to fall and back to spring and back to fall. So no one really knows, but it's interesting because there seems to be a lot of converging, like why was Stephen Schwartz, tasked by the military or the government to remote view the Sphinx? Why did SRI go in there and analyze it? Why are they finding all this stuff underneath the pyramid now? And then the whole Atlantean archive and the new knowledge being bestowed. I was like, hey, we'll know pretty soon, but a lot of arrows are pointing to Egypt right now.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, it's captivated the world's attention right now for a number of different reasons. Those underground scans being one of them. I'm not sure what to believe about that. The guys want to come on the show, and I'm sure we'll make it happen. And a lot of respect for the science that they're doing there. I've just talked to so many people that have explanations that it's like. So I just don't know what to think on that. The idea of there being tunnels underneath the Giza Plateau and the pyramid is, I think everybody's there. Like we all know that there's, tunnels and chambers and whatnot. Are there 2 mile long vertical, is there a spacecraft made of metal that's 50 feet, 40 feet long, and Hawara. Maybe. Maybe.
I wish they would just let us do a little digging because there's one way to find out.
There's one way to find out. We need to understand what's in Hawara for sure, because that place is just going to be just loaded with history. That would have been, like Herodotus said, it dwarfed the pyramids in grandeur, So and that's real. That exists. That's under there. We know that. We have scans of that now. The only question is, what else? How do you get there? Why did we cover it up? Why did Hawass not come out and? He knew it for over 10 years now. I think that's been there, and so I would think that the world might want to pool some money together to divert that ditch or whatever, the canal or whatever it is, out of that area, and then rebuild it somewhere else, and then excavate. Like we all want to know what's down there.
Like I said, why would they hide it? You asked earlier who's managing this system, this Earth. What Edgar Casey talks about, and this aligns with other things I've heard, is that a lot of this is consciousnessly linked, having to do with our overall collective conscious maturity. And the reason is that, according to them, the Atlanteans fell a lot because of their own conscious immaturity towards the end when they got very powerful. They didn't have this equilibrium between their conscious level of their quality of consciousness and their technological superiority. So basically what you look at the world now is the same way. We have amazing technological reach. We have, we're about to hit like so many convergent singularities with technology and AI and so many things happening. But consciously, have we caught up? Huh?
Crypto?
Yeah. There's so many things happening, but it seems like our conscious level is kind of lagging behind. And what they talk about is that the pyramid or the Atlantean archive contains something potentially, this is all theoretical, but called the Firestone. And this Firestone is a certain kind of a red crystal that was very, I don't know, I guess you say important, or a big part, a catalyst for the downfall of the Atlanteans and the cataclysm that destroyed, most of the world, the Great Deluge. So say potentially there's something in there, there's information and possibly some sort of a technology that in the wrong hands or with the wrong consciousness state of being, we could abuse and possibly repeat what happened before. So you could say, okay, maybe this is being orchestrated at a higher level through conscious limitations placed on the people that are in charge, misdirection, or possibly even, they're a part of it or they know. I don't know, but there seems to be a purposeful, misdirection. They seem to be hiding stuff. They seem to be, it's obviously lying at times because, they just say things that aren't true. And you have to think, is it being orchestrated at a higher level because the information that's in there we're not ready for? And if you're not ready for it, it's like handing a kid a loaded gun. It's not a good idea. It could possibly be that, and it could be that we're getting to a tipping point or some sort of a threshold where even despite that, it has to be released because there might be some sort of a time element that we're up against. That's the only other explanation I can find of why there's the secrecy around something that should be universally agreed upon. We want to know what's down there.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, that makes sense for sure. Yeah, a lot of times when we get secrecy on things and we get people covering things up, it's because whatever the information is goes against whatever narrative they're trying to sell, and so if they're covering up stuff like that, it's, a lot of times it's because it conflicts with the information and it's going to raise a lot of questions, and they don't want to have to field the questions and deal with it and be proven wrong. That's the worst thing for any professional, of course, to be wrong, because everybody's 100% about everything. But
if it somehow disproves their known Egyptian history that they're so proud of,
all that,
because
sure.
that would be a big paradigm shift for people. And sometimes, like, people always say they want to wake up, they want to know the truth, but it's when people are so conditioned and they're so loyal to a certain thing and they're so indoctrinated a certain belief, and this is what our history is and this is where we came from and all that, when you just tell them everything, there's this ontological shock element that we think we're ready. People say they're ready all the time to see aliens. I'm sitting right now looking at an alien sitting on a couch. I love your studio. But like, if an alien walked in right now, would you be emotionally, spiritually, energetically, intellectually ready for that? Could you handle it? I'm not saying to you. I'm saying to the average person. We don't know.
No,
You
for
don't
sure
know.
not.
And when you're dealing with whole
scream and-
cultures and civilizations,
Yeah, people would pass out. People would scream. They would, run into a wall. They would die. People wouldn't know how to handle that because it completely conflicts with everything that they ever thought was real and was
Yeah.
true. But I mean, now you've got the U.S. government saying that this is real. You've got, God, I just talked to him at a football game last fall. He was in the UFO documentary, Marco Rubio. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. He's coming out and saying that, look, this is real and these are out there and we don't know what they are. And they're doing things that we can't explain and they're moving at 50,000 miles per hour, making 90-degree turns. And, you've got Jay Stratton coming out and who ran the Pentagon program saying that he has directly seen with his eyes alien spacecraft and alien beings. I mean, that's intense information. And it's like, if people really let that sink in for a second, what we're being told by the people in charge, either A, it's a massive disinformation campaign, or B, this is reality.
Yeah. There's actually a C.
Yeah.
If you want to hear it.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
So we were just touching on the Atlantean archive, and people think of Atlantis, they think of Little Mermaid or whatever, you know what I mean? Like people living underneath the sea with their little pitchforks or whatever. But if you just, like Robert Monroe talked a lot, I mean, he went and visited past advanced civilizations on Earth, and he was very adamant that we are definitely not the first advanced, civilization. And when you think about what the Atlanteans are, the Atlanteans were like kind of an America type empire or Greek or Roman-esque empire, but before the cataclysm, before the reset, before the Great Deluge. Now, let's just say this was 13,000 years ago. I know people argue over that, but let's just say 13,000 years ago. Look how far we've come in the last 200 years. We've gone from riding around on horses to we have robots on Mars, okay? In 200 years. Now, think about a human civilization that was already advanced 13,000 years ago. And now think about if they've had unimpeded progress for 13,000 years. They would be indistinguishable from angels, aliens. We would have no way. There's something called the cargo cult, theory, which is basically like when we started landing planes during World War II, we were finding these little bitty Indonesian islands and turning little, fields into landing strips, and we'd land planes there. That's a human landing a plane on Earth. Other humans that lived there, indigenous tribes, saw those humans and thought they were gods, devils, demons, aliens, had no way to explain how these people came in this flying metal bird. They started building effigies of airplanes and of control towers. We started giving them cigarettes and candy and stuff because we're weird like that. They started worshiping our airmen as gods. That was a human on Earth and another human on Earth, and the one human couldn't even figure out what the other human was. Now imagine a human from 13,000 years ago that's advanced. So these craft, I have a hard time, even though I believe that there's physical, alien type worlds out there in the cosmos, probably millions of them with intelligent life. I don't see why there wouldn't be. I have a hard time believing they would come here and just kind of look around, and pass off little nonchalant messages of inspiration. Hey, you shouldn't play with nukes and clean up your environment. Like that seems bizarre to me, but that's not bizarre if the beings live here and are from here and share an Earth with us, possibly living inside the Earth or whatnot. Of course, they don't want us to destroy the place. Of course, they would intervene and they would mess with our nuclear silos, and they would have some sort of a presence here on the surface. They would be interacting, observing, stopping us from doing dumb stuff. That makes a lot of sense. So therefore, those exotic craft and those UFOs and UAPs might not be alien at all.
Yeah, very well could be human, different human, future human.
Future human, past human.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All of it. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and that's why it's like there's so many. We just don't know.
We just don't know.
We don't know. And the government doesn't know. And so that's, again, part of the secrecy. Like if you don't know, if you're Zahi Hawass, you don't know what's underneath here because you can't get there or whatever. You don't have the funding. You just don't know. So you keep it quiet. You cover it up, and that's what's happened with this UFO phenomenon for, decades, 80 years, more potentially. So.
I think part of it's they don't know, and they can't just come out and say they don't know, and they don't want to just say certain things and like just give an incomplete story because then it creates panic.
Yep.
So I actually agree with them there. An ontological shock at a mass scale is you don't want to just collapse the world for no reason because it would. It has to be done in a very measured way. I I think that if that hypothesis is correct and there are advanced humans that are here,
I'm on the fuck it side, by the way. Just put it all out there and
Yeah.
just tell everybody right away and let people deal with it however they want and let them get over it in 10 minutes or 2 hours or 5 years or whatever. But it's gonna, like, to get to the truth and to operate under base reality, we need the people that are closest to the data to be able to come out and say what they know. I think that's absolutely critical, that transparency and honesty and truth are a part of this from anybody who knows. And that's why, for me, the whistleblowers are so critical. But it's time for Trump to come out and say something. When you got Marco Rubio commenting on this on a freaking movie, it's time for Trump to come out and really, let us know, like, what does he know at least, and if he tells us, he doesn't know, then look, let's keep digging. Let's keep finding out what's really happening within the Pentagon, what's really happening within Raytheon, what's really, so it's like.
But you hit it right there. I mean, I think full disclosure will never come because the biggest thing they're trying to cover up is that, and this goes back to the Day After Roswell book from Colonel Corso.
Great book.
Back in the 90s. Yeah, great book. And he spilled the beans back then. He was the OG whistleblower saying that they got this exotic technology and started distributing it to private corporations so that they couldn't be FOIA'd. And those private corporations, so you have Corporation A gets exotic material, Corporation B doesn't. Guess which one's going to go and be $1 trillion business? Well, right? It's not rocket science.
No, it's not
or
difficult.
maybe it is. But you when you disclose all that, now you're disclosing that. And that's criminal activity. That's lawsuit heaven. That's a whole,
So how can they come out now with all of the criminal activity and the lawsuit, the deaths, the unexplainable stuff?
I think that's why it looks so messy. When we're watching this disclosure process, it looks so amateurish.
Yep.
It looks like they don't know what the hell they're doing.
Right.
Because I think that they throw some stuff out there and then they see the reaction and then they're like, okay, that didn't work. Now throw this out there. Oh, that didn't work.
But who is they?
Well, I mean, there's obviously, and I hate to use the word, but there's obviously like a quote unquote deep state. There's a government within the government that's privy to all this stuff that is very, very compartmentalized, that knows what's up because this is not new. I think that these craft that are being donated to us are, like I said, like if you want to call them Nordics or whatever, there seem to be these advanced humans that are still earthbound, that still play a role in all this. And they seem to be trying to get us to up to par with them so that they can help more, communicate more, or whatever. Maybe they have nefarious actions. I don't know. Maybe it's both. Maybe there's different factions of them, which if they're humans, probably. When have we ever agreed on everything?
And nefarious might be a matter of perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
if you're a deer living in the woods and I want to develop there, I'm going to seem pretty nefarious to you.
Sure.
But that's not the intention.
For example,
it's all perspective. Absolutely. So I think that is an element. I think there's an advanced ancient human element that plays a role in all this. There's actually a lot of evidence that there's a time travel component to this because when you create anti-gravitic, craft, being that, space and time are intrinsically linked, there's a good chance that when you manipulate, gravity, you manipulate time as well. And these things could be capable of time travel. So therefore, maybe there's some sort of a breakaway civilization that, this has all been theorized, but, back in World War II, discovered this stuff and is able to traverse time, and they're playing a role. They're trying to kind of bring together a past timeline and a future timeline, and that's why there's some favoritism. It seems like where these craft are crashed. It seems to be pretty convenient. Mm-hmm. Oh, right outside of this Air Force base in the middle of the desert. You know what I mean? It's like this stuff is happening in a way to where it doesn't seem random. It seems orchestrated. It doesn't seem alien to me. Now, this is not to say there's not aliens. Of course there are. But I think most of what we're seeing here, what Rubio's talking about, and a lot of the stuff that's coming out with disclosure is Earth-made, earthbound, but maybe not from this time period. That's where most of the evidence is pointing right now. And that's a lot harder to explain to the public than extraterrestrials from Zeta Reticuli. I think that's been conditioned. We're used to looking up at the stars and thinking, there's probably some intelligent life out there. We're not used to thinking maybe ancient humans are super advanced and live inside the earth and fly UFOs around and actually manipulate our politics. I think that's a lot harder sell.
Yeah. So if it is humans, then how is there any argument that this is a threat to humanity?
Well, I mean, I guess you could just say there's some pretty evil humans. And I guess if you're on the opposite side of their agenda, then it could be a threat to you.
But wouldn't we know that by now? Like if this was couldn't they just have killed us already, do whatever they wanted to do already, destroy the planet if they have evil intentions of.
They don't want to destroy the planet.
No.
But there might be a eugenics element to this. So there might be like a part that is not advantageous to certain parts of the world. I mean, there definitely is a standard description of these time traveling beings. So I don't think everyone's excited about it. It's a mixed bag.
Yeah.
But I don't think in any way they want to destroy the world. I think they're trying to keep us from destroying the world. I think that's a big concern for sure.
Yeah, that was part of the Ariel school incident where that message was delivered to 80 school children between first grade and eighth grade of, hey, the earth and taking care of it, and they all saw a saucer and an entity, whatever you want to call it, pop out, and they communicated telepathically. So yeah, it does seem like that's a part of it. And if they're giving us these messages like protect the earth and nukes are bad, dude, and don't kill yourself, like and they are future humans or past humans or whatever, to me the likelihood that there's anything ill-intentioned for the human race going on is extraordinarily unlikely. That and even if it's an extraterrestrial threat, I think it's extraordinarily unlikely that that there's a negative intention amongst whatever this phenomenon is. And I think that for a variety of reasons. I think it's very, very highly unlikely. And if it's humans, like they're going to want our best intentions, but maybe that means, just throw out a crazy example, maybe that means we need one government, or we don't need any government, or whatever it is. And so for us as a human species currently operating, that might seem disruptive if that push comes to shove, because it's going to break up what we're used to. But just as a crazy example, from a broader perspective, it's really not. They're attempting to get us to a place where we can be sustainable with the planet.
Yep. Yeah. And we talked earlier about, the objectivity of this world, and that, reincarnation being a thing. You literally, like, my argument against simulation theory is that, like, people don't take responsibility for themselves, the human avatar, and this planet, because it's all fake. Who cares? Well, I don't think that's the case. And like we've shown before, like when you reincarnate, you come back into this place. You can literally leave something for yourself and come back and find it in another life. So you need to take care of this place. And I think that the evolution of this world and the protection of this world is paramount, because this world is our playground. This is our simulator. We need this. But the human avatar is just as important. And that's why over 1 million plus years, cataclysm after cataclysm, asteroids, war, famine, everything, we're still here. So I know we're incredibly, resilient and adaptable, but we're also pretty weak. I mean, if you think about it, humans aren't perfectly made to survive in this world. I can't help but think that there's some sort of intervention and some sort of management going on, that our species has been nurtured and protected in a way that ensures our survival as a species. Now, if you look at it that way, that means there's somebody more advanced than us helping us survive these cataclysms. I mean, all the ancient stories of, the Anunnaki and Quetzalcoatl and all the different beings that help restart civilizations after resets and cataclysms, that's been told for thousands of years. There seems to be an element there. Now, circle back around to your point. If there is a higher intelligence that's kind of protecting and guiding us through all of this, they would have a bigger picture. They would have some sort of a plan. They would at least have an idea of what they're wanting this to be. They might even know exactly what they want. So at a certain point, intervening and helping us to kind of go a certain direction and guide us to a certain direction, politically, spiritually, consciously, physically, all these things, maybe they are doing it for completely, benevolent purposes. And I think that they are, because they share a world with us, and this is a project for them. We're like their progenitors, we're their children.
And they've made good progress. If that's really what's happening, they've made good progress. And
so you kind of have to, in a way, I guess, trust the plan that this is being guided a particular way. And if there are, people don't like change, at all. So change at a wide scale, like change to culture and religion and money and governance, people are going to reject that.
All of it.
But it doesn't mean it's not the right thing to do, because they're looking at it from a bigger perspective. So I agree with you. It seems to be intelligently managed, probably by benevolent beings that I think are probably going to be way more human than we expect.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's fascinating. And that whole Mike Masters thing on Danny Jones, for me, there's where I checked him out
Yeah.
and kind of
He's
listened
awesome.
to him. I guess he went on Rogan too. I think I saw that as well. But yeah, it's a wild theory, man. There's a lot there that makes sense in terms of like the even the grays being future humans, that if we were to continue to evolve and go down the same path for another, couple of million years or whatever, that ultimately we could end up looking something like that. That our skin changes, our eyes change, our bodies change. We don't need we don't need whatever, the extra digit, or whatever it might be. So.
Well, they have a slit for a mouth, but they don't use it to talk or eat. That would be an evolutionary thing.
Right.
Like it's still there physically, but they don't use it. Same reason we have wisdom teeth and we don't really need them. So much of the gray, I'm looking at one right now. I mean, it looks like a future human, but we're talking about, millions of years down the road, probably after living in space or something like that for an extended amount of time. The really interesting thing is this is according to MUFON data, MUFON's who studies UFO encounters and stuff. The two most reported encounters between quote unquote aliens are grays and humanoids that are often described as Nordics. Okay.
Tall white or
Tall
Nordic
whites,
or
yeah.
whatever.
Nordics, yep. So if you look at it that way, those are the two most reported alien encounters. 80% of all encounters are between those two. There's a good chance that both of those are human, at least some form of an Earth-based humanoid, okay? Now that means that 80+% of our alien encounters aren't even aliens at all. We just can't explain them. Now there's also a lot of evidence that for lack of better words, the Nordics use grays as helpers, kind of. There's a hierarchy there. Now it's really fascinating because what if the grays are such a future version of humans and they're augmented to the point where they're not really spiritually connected to source anymore? They've lost that tether and they're trying to get it back. What grays and fascination with humans is more at a spiritual level. They come into our dreams. They're in our afterlife. They're observing. They're chronicling our lives. They're way more clinical and psychological in their interest with humans. And I find that very fascinating because they might possibly be trying to reverse engineer that part of themselves they don't have anymore that's disconnected from the non-physical side, from the spirit side or source. And we still have that because they look at us as kind of, we're early enough in our development where we have not severed that, And then you look at, like, let's say the Nordics, there's almost like a bifurcation. You have augmented and you have activated. And it's almost like they've teamed together, and it's almost like the Nordics are helping them to regain that part of them because they work together, which is really fascinating because they shouldn't, So I think there's a connection there that's beyond our ability to really conceptualize why they're working together. I don't think it's just because they need a little worker bee. I mean, they could probably create robots or some other form of manual labor. They're using this synthetic biological hybrid type being, which if you listen to Dr. Masters, they seem to be future humans, and he would know better than anybody. This is, He used to study ancient humans and previous humans, and he was like, if you extrapolate out, we're going to look like that. So let's take him at his word and hypothesis, and he's an amazing guy, and his story is just fascinating. But if they're future humans, okay, they're coming back to mess with us for some particular reason. It seems to be more spiritually connected, and the Nordic beings are helping them in a way. So we're a strange family, but it puts together the strange family picture where everyone's kind of helping everyone in some way, but we're the ones that are sort of blind to it. We don't know what's going on. They do. They're working together and we're getting like little snippets of it, but we seem to be a very important part of this. And I don't think it's malevolent. I just think that maybe we're not mature enough to disclose it all too. You know what I mean? It'd be like telling your kid, your young child, all the stuff you know. You do it in a very measured way. You're like, okay, I'll tell you a little bit now, and as you get older, I'll tell you a little more. It might be something like that,
Yeah, it could be. Very well could be. Yeah, for sure. Well, this has been one of my favorite conversations that I've done so far. So I really appreciate it. It's been, I think, super. I feel like you are ready to blow up, and I hope that this podcast will really kind of lead to that and allow you to get on some bigger channels and get yourself out. I know that you will, and I know that you'll be successful because of the because of the approach that you take, and because of the knowing that you have, and because of the experiences that you had, and because of your open mind and your pragmatic kind of view about these topics, these very complex and very polarizing, topics that I think that you keep a very level head about. And so I can see, big things kind of happening for you. And again, I hope that this is kind of the start of that. But it's been an amazing conversation. And I guess, prior to getting to kind of a wrap up, I guess, I mean, what else is on your mind in terms of topics that we did not cover today that you wanted to cover?
We ran the gamut today, but
Yeah.
a big thing it's unavoidable right now is AI, and what role artificial intelligence plays in our future, and what it is. And that's something that I look at everything from a consciousness standpoint. And that's been a very fascinating dive. I try to stay, not tied to any particular outcome. I don't want to be biased or pulled in any direction. And I went into it very open-minded, and I have changed my opinion on it 20 times over the last year or two, which I think is a lot of fun because it's an evolving topic. But I think AI is going to play a big role. I don't think it'll ever replace humans. I think it's going to show us what the importance of being a human is. I think being a human is awesome. I think that human beings are awesome. I think Earth is awesome. I think that this is a very important part. I mean, there's trillions and trillions of stars and probably life forms in the cosmos, but there seems to be a lot of attention on Earth and humans right now. And I think that we're an important part of the puzzle. And I think this has been a project that's been underway for millions of years and maybe longer. And there's a lot of care and attention on us right now, and I think that's really interesting. I think AI is going to do a lot of great things for us. I have my thoughts on what it is from a consciousness standpoint, but the thing I see it doing the most is making people realize the importance of a human and what a human is. As we argue over, should AI, draw and paint for us? Should it make music for us? Should it write for us? And then we see the limitations of what it does and the mistakes it makes and the way that it can be incredibly intelligent, scholarly PhD level intellect, but it can't be human. It can't replicate being a human because nothing can except being a human. And I love that for us right now, is that it's shining a light on the little nuances and the little strange quirks that make being a human so cool.
Well, love it. Wonderful perspective, and appreciate it. Yeah, very, very much. So, well, good. We need to do this again. We'll do it again. Maybe a year from now or whatever. If you have any crazy, breaking news or anything that you want to share, just know that between now and then, if there's anything that comes up, we can reconnect, and I'd be happy to get your content out there. But it's really been a tremendous conversation, very eye-opening for me, and it's just nice to chat with somebody else who, I think kind of shares a similar perspective. So it's been a lot of fun for me personally. Thank you.
It's been an honor and a dream, Matt. I love you and your team and everything you're doing here. I'm a big fan of your show, and super happy for all your success. And I'm watching and studying and getting ideas and inspiration from you all the time. So Awesome. Keep doing what you're doing.
Appreciate that. Appreciate that very much. Well, very good. We'll wrap it with that.
All right. Thank you. Awesome. Thanks, guys.